Unfinished business? Perhaps. Crazy? Definitely. To me, it is absolutely insane to think that any NBA team would want to give max money, and by max money, we're talking about $40 damn million per season for several years, to a point guard who is 33 years of age, that yet again, when his team needed him in the playoffs, was unable to suit up when it mattered the most due to injury, hence why I call him Porcelain Paul or Ceramic Chris. The Houston Rockets, though, didn't care. They're giving this dude $160 million guaranteed over the next 4 seasons. $160 million over 4 seasons, $40 million per year, because you've got unfinished business. Now, don't get me wrong, on the one hand, I have to admit that the trade for Chris Paul kind of worked for the Houston Rockets. They were the best team in the NBA during the regular season. They had home court advantage in the Western Conference Finals, and they had a 3-2 series lead against the defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors. It's hard to sit there and say that that deal didn't work. But it also deals with the fault in the logic of trusting and believing fully in Chris Paul, because time after time after time, Porcelain Paul has made it known that he can't stay healthy when it matters most. And when I say made it known, just means he always gets fucking hurt when his team needs him. What good does it do to get there when once you're there, you can't count on one of the key cogs in the wheel? And what is particularly insane to me about all of this is maybe the Rockets feel like next year, if everybody's healthy, next year they keep the core and the chemistry together on that team for the most part. Even when you lose somebody like a Trevor Ariza, you still have enough there that they can come right back and be in a position to push the Warriors and be the biggest threat to them in the Western Conference and in the NBA as general. But again, it still deals with the fundamental flaw in the logic of counting on Chris Paul when it matters most. And what is particularly insane for a guy that seems to have a variety of injuries in recent years, you have now tied yourself to the tune of $40 million, 40+% or 40% or close to it of your salary cap space to a guy that always gets hurt in fucking May, who's already, 33 years of age? So even if you say there's a 4th-year player option in there, do you think in any way, shape, or form Chris Paul, when he's 36 years old, probably a couple of more injuries along the way, is going to turn down $40 million freaking dollars for another year? If he did, that would be crazy. And what would be even crazier is if any team, when he's 36 years of age, comes into the marketplace and offers him anywhere close to what he's making on this current contract. We talk about contracts and whether or not they're tradable, and there aren't really any truly untradeable contracts in sports. And oftentimes you could say that's potentially true. But when you are talking about something like this and a deal like this, who in the hell would take on Chris Paul in any portion of that remaining contract, unless it was in the last year it was expiring? Who would do that? Who would trade for that? And I just keep coming back to the fact, you're paying a guy $40 million, and he's not even the best player on your team. You're paying a guy $40 million that when you could have really used him and needed him the most, he wasn't there. Now, if you sit there and think about re-signing Clint Capella, that's probably going to take $20 damn million a year, if not more, to do. He might get close to a damn max contract. Now you're over the salary cap with just 3 players, one of whom you have to expect is going to miss a number of games the next couple of seasons each go-round and potentially not be there because his body breaks down at some point in time in the playoffs. That's just nuts. Now, ultimately, to be fair to Daryl Morey and the Houston Rockets front office, if you win the NBA championship next year, then that Chris Paul deal is 100% worth it 100 out of 100 times because you accomplished the number one goal of the program, which was to win the world title. It was to win the NBA Finals, become NBA champions. You worry about the stuff with Chris Paul and the massive monstrosity of an albatross that contract is going to be on that team's financial flexibility and cap situation over the next several years if you win a ring next season or the season after that, or maybe you win 2 in a 3-year stretch. Then at that point in time, the deal makes sense 100 out of 100 times, even if Chris Paul is a significantly diminished player towards the end of that contract. You get a ring, that's what matters. But it still doesn't mean that this deal isn't completely crazy and insane. Why would the Rockets do this? The only thing I can think of is a couple of fold. Number one, Chris Paul is a leading player rep, I believe, if not the players' president for the Players Union. So he's probably not a guy you really want to piss off, especially in the grand scheme of things as you go into the marketplace and try to bring in other players. Chris Paul is going to have amazing influence amongst his peers because of his position within the Players Union. So there's that. The Rockets in the future wanting to be able to talk about how they took care of players and pay players. Now you can sit there and have Chris Paul make that same statement for you. Maybe that's something. Maybe it's also something like even under the old leadership, the old ownership, I should say, there was kind of a nonverbal handshake type of agreement that Chris Paul turned down some money to facilitate the trade from the Clippers to the Rockets, and the organization wanted to take care of him and show him respect for that. Now, granted, I feel like you could have showed him respect for a few $1 million less per season, but you went there. And at least the organization, reportedly, based off of what they said in the past, has kept their word. You know, as Tony Montana said, you've got 2 things in this world, your word and your boss. Clearly, Chris Paul has balls. He's a man of his word. He wanted to be in Houston. He's staying in Houston. Clearly, the Rockets organization believes keeping their word is incredibly important. And that's great and all, but goddamn, you better hope this works out. You better hope Chris Paul can actually make it through an entire playoff run healthy. You better hope that he could still be that guy that you need him to be over the next couple of years. Because if he's not, this contract that is fully guaranteed, $40 million per year, could go down as one of the worst contracts in NBA history. Win a ring, and you shut people like me up. You don't, and you should deserve to be blasted about this decision and this amount of money being given to a guy that's starting to get towards the tail end of his career. You're going to be blasted for generations about it, as you should. $40 million a year for Chris Paul. 4 years, $160 million. That's just insane.